Aloha. Blessings from Maui.
Blessings. Thank you. I hope your Purim was an amazing Purim, everyone. Hope you had a great Purim. The Purim vibes are still in the air. And we are, as we know, like the weekly portion that we read and the holidays that we're in actually are very much interconnected to each other. So in this class, God willing, we're going to talk about the greatest knowing is the not knowing, which is very apropos of Purim, that we just celebrated, and also very much connected to the Parsha that we are in. And we're gonna discuss that. So why is this class called the Inner Vibe? Because the idea is that, we know what's going on in the world, in our world, our inner world, not based on, what the New York Times says, what the Washington, what the journal says, or whatever it is. It's the Parsha of the week and the holiday that we are in that is really signifying like what is going on. And when we're able to tune in a little bit more to the depth of it, then that is something that's able to benefit us tremendously in every aspect in our lives. So when we understand some of the messages that were basically being given. So we just celebrated Purim, and the essence of Purim is such a deep holiday. And now that we're sort of on the other side of it, we're looking in from not a preparation point of view, but almost from the opposite point of view. Hey guys, welcome. Shalom.
Thank you.
It's great to have you. What's going on? So we're looking at things not from a preparation point of view, but almost like what did we receive and what could we take away from the holiday of Purim, right? Besides getting whatever, happy on Purim. This year for me personally on Purim, it was a great Purim. It was really, we had the meal in our home where we like it, around some great friends, a lot of wine, and it was great. It was beautiful. It was perfect. It was amazing. Kind of retired like a gentleman, and that's a good thing, because you don't want to lose yourself, right? But the idea is to kind of lose yourself, right? But not lose yourself in a way that, well, whatever happens really kind of happens, but you want to come to a place of what we call adelo yada, until the place that you don't know, And what's that place that you don't know? We thought that the whole idea is to know. Like, it's all about knowing. Look at all these books that are around here. It's like, in Judaism, we very much emphasize the knowing aspect of it, right? The Talmud Torah, the learning of Torah, is considered like the greatest mitzvah for us, so the idea of really spending time learning and knowing and studying and asking and all that is at the highest, has the highest virtue. So what does it mean, the not knowing? So we're supposed to get to a place of the not knowing. So there's a very powerful statement from the 13th century philosopher called Rabbi Meir Ibn Gabbai, lived in Spain. He said that the greatest knowing is the non-knowing. That the greatest knowing is the non-knowing. That if we want to know specifically about knowing God, knowing Hashem, so we go to a place of knowing, so it's essentially based on what we know and what we could imagine, what we could compare to in our human aphorisms and our human ways of thinking. We think like, okay, so God is this, and God is compassionate, for example. So if God is compassionate, I could compare what compassion means. If God is forgiving, I could compare God as being, forgiving. And so I don't really understand what that means, because I'm comparing it based on what I think that I know that means. And the truth is that God is way beyond any of the definitions that we are able to understand in our own feeble mind, because in what we think that we understand, that is a limitation. So the not knowing, to get to a place of the not knowing, gets us to a place of knowing what I think that I know, and then afterwards understanding that even what I think I know, it's way beyond that, and it's a totally different level. So there's a beautiful teaching before we go into the Parsha that goes kind of like this. And this kind of like spans the purpose of life in many ways, the purpose of our life. And we come down to this life, into this life to do what? To come to a place of what we call tikkun. We're here in this world to rectify, to fix things of the past, to fix our, to get in line with our mission, with our purpose, etc. But we come down as what we call babies, right? We come down into this world in an immature kind of state, that literally, as babies, we're in this world, babies are immature, and we as humans are immature. So how do you say a baby in Hebrew? Tinok. It's got the same letters as tikkun in it, right? It's just is not ready yet. So the baby is constantly in an immature state of mind, of thinking that it's all about him or her, and it's basically, that's the way a baby is wired, is a little bit narcissistic. It thinks about itself or himself or herself, and it's all about me. And so that's an immature state of mind. And our purpose of life is to really get to a place of tikkun, where we realize it's not about me and it's not about what I think that I know, but there's something that I need to emulate and someone that I need to emulate. And in the teachings of Kabbalah, the purpose of our life is to emulate the Creator, because that's the greatest good that's possible. And what's the greatest good? What does the Creator essentially always do for us? Is always giving. And the idea of being not on the selfish side, but being on the giving side. Now, what that means is it's a whole balance of getting there, because you could give and you're basically being taken advantage of your giving. And so you have to know how to give and what to give with, etc. And that idea is really the whole balance of what we work on for the majority of our lives, that we reach this level of what we call tikkun, right? But then we get to a place which is in our older age, right? Which is called nituk. Welcome. Nituk means to let go. And these three stages of life are the three stages of immature consciousness. There's the consciousness of now coming to a place of balance and getting into a healthy state of flow of between what I'm receiving and what I'm giving. And then the third stage is the stage of what we call letting go, tikkun, nituk, of letting go. And that's considered the mature state of mind, the highest state of mind, because it goes beyond the state of mind of the self. It's like actually letting go of what I'm thinking that I'm accomplishing, because there's something which is, again, the not knowing, which is going on, which is way higher than what I'm even able to understand and to receive based on my own expectations and own self. Right? Does this make sense? Okay. So we're gonna talk about this. The greatest knowing is the non-knowing, right? How do we see this in our Parsha, the Parsha that we're in right now? So the Parsha that we're in right now, we actually see the biggest fall that happened for the people, right? For the Jewish people, since the fall of Adam and Eve, because the fall of Adam and Eve in paradise was the original primordial fall, right? There was the immaturity that they fell into. They were there, they were perfect beings, so to speak, right? Or they thought it's about perfection. And we'll talk about like the idea of perfection versus imperfection, because that's a very, very big distinguishing factor of, do we look at God as he's perfect, or God is even beyond perfect? Because what we consider perfect, we sort of think that God is perfect, and therefore if I'm not falling in line, then I'm not perfect, and we don't like being not perfect. And therefore that's the whole like expectation of like that we have of ourselves, which is sort of what Adam and Eve were at before the fall. They were at a place of sort of perfection. They were there in a state of mind of being perfect, and they fell. They fell, and that fall was a fall that we're all here in this world to fix. That's the level of tikkun that we're in this world. We're here in this world to fix this sin of Adam and Eve, right? The fall of man. Now it says that by the sin of the golden calf, or sorry, by Mount Sinai, they were already on the level, the people or the world was on the level of perfection, of fixing the sin of paradise. So they fixed the sin of paradise in that state. They were back to the state of like Adam and Eve, the people, right? They received the first, well, they were about to receive the first tablets, but they heard the 10 commandments and they were like, wow, we are downloading the greatest information possible. And all of that came to a halt when they basically fell off, right? Grace. They followed, it was basically the same sin as the sin of Adam and Eve in paradise. And that sin was the sin of following the external senses, the sensory experience versus the inner experience. That was the sin of Adam and Eve. It was following the external versus following what's going on inside of us. Sure.
How were they on the same level as Adam and Eve? Like, was it because they were the people that were there experiencing what they were experiencing, or they did something to like reach that level?
So great question. They actually went through 49 days of perfection, coming out of Egypt and working on themselves, transcending from level to level to level to level, all the way to getting to the 49th gate that they could reach. And then they got to the 50th gate where they received the Torah, where basically at that point the world came back to its perfected state of now. Right, we say Yom HaShishi, the sixth day. What does it say? The sixth day. The sixth day is the sixth day of Sivan. That the whole world was contingent on its being created on the sixth day of Sivan, on Shavuot, because at that point they received the Torah, which is the whole purpose of existence, where humanity could connect to the infinite God, right? Where we have the mitzvot, where we have the infinite and the finite that are able to be merged, which is the whole purpose of creation. That the physicality is not just viewed as physicality, as somethingness, but it is really, there's an innate truth that is within the finite. And the finite is just, seems like it's, doesn't have any life force, but the truth is, like the Arizal says, that even a rock has a life force to it, has a level of nefesh, and that was able to be, that was seen, that was experienced on Mount Sinai, where they felt all of existence, like all of existence was literally vibrating, God's oneness. Echad, like the oneness of creation was felt throughout all of existence, the heaven, the earth, the oceans. They were, right. That's basically the purpose of existence, is the unity of God in the world. Hashem echad u'shmo echad. And that was there before the sin, right? Felt like very tangibly. And that was lost because of the sin where there was duality, the split, right? The split of the self, right? That I'm living in two realities, that there's a reality of my inner world and my outer world. And they seem like they're two different worlds. But the truth is that our whole purpose in creation is to actualize that inner world, because when we understand it comes from the inner world, and from the inner world, it goes to the outer world. Yes, we're affected by what's going on in our outer world, especially when we're young and whatnot. But at a certain point, what dictates reality or truth is living in accordance to what we call the neshama, the soul-based living, right? The nefesh elokis, the godly, and not the nefesh habahamis, the animal soul reality, which is about just give me more food, give me, I want more comfort, I want more pleasure, I want to not do things that's the animal soul consciousness, right? As it says in Tanya, right? That's the animal soul consciousness. The godly soul consciousness is I want to be more and more like God, and I want to be able to give and bestow and to help humanity and to change the world and leave an imprint on it, which is way better than when I came into this world. And that's the godly soul consciousness. And that's basically what we're searching for. And that's the whole level of tikkun, coming to the place of, yeah, but I'm also in a state of, I need this and I want this. And I'm still dealing with my own stuff and inner ups and downs and traumas and whatnot. And that's basically what we do. That's the majority of our life of getting to that place of balance, right? Between these two worlds, the worlds of, what I think that I know. And this is seems like the ultimate good, versus there's a world that I don't see, but I know that is something which is truthful and everlasting, eternal, and I need to tap into that. And so that's exactly the world of the Ba'al Teshuva, the difference between the Tzadik and the Ba'al Teshuva. So by Adam and Eve, right, they were on the level of Tzadikim. They were a Tzadik. When again on Mount Sinai, they were on the level of being Tzadikim. They were just, they were perfect, they were amazing. And then they fell, right? The sin of the golden calf. And again, going back into the sensory duality that was going on, that there's two worlds, that there's a world of now questioning, oneself and what one knows, because when there is that fall, and all of us do, King Solomon says, Sheva yipol tzadik v'kam, that a tzaddik falls down 7 times and he gets up. So it doesn't mean that the tzaddik doesn't fall. The tzaddik does fall, and he needs to fall in order to really find himself or herself, right? But the difference is between the tzaddik, but really in this case, it's kind of like the Ba'al Teshuva, we call him a tzaddik, is that Sheva yipol tzaddik v'kam. The difference is that he gets up. The getting up is the biggest thing, because it's easy to fall down. But the thing is, the getting up is where it's all at. So the sin of the golden calf represents this falling down, a very serious one that actually we're still kind of paying for. The Midrash says we're still paying for that, sin of the golden calf. And that happened on the 17th of Tammuz, and then on the 19th of Tammuz, Moses goes back up, and he goes and he atones for the people, prays for them and whatnot. And then he comes back down on right before Rosh Chodesh Elul, right? And then he goes back up again, Rosh Chodesh Elul, and for the 3rd time. And at that point, for 40 days, he receives the 2nd tablets that we receive on Yon Kippur, So it's 40 days from Elul until Yom Kippur, we receive the second tablets. And so what the Midrash says about the second tablets is as follows, that sort of like two contradictory sounding things, that talking about the greatness of the first tablets, that the first tablets were so great, we would not have needed any other books besides for the 5 books, besides for these, for the Torah, the written Torah. We would not need anything else. We wouldn't need what we call the Torah Ba'al Peh, the oral Torah, which is the inner dimension of the written Torah, right? That's what makes Judaism unique, is that we have the oral Torah, and the oral Torah is Torah Ba'al Peh, that we believe. Maimonides says that this is one of the tenets of the Jewish faith, is that the written Torah was given to Moses on Mount Sinai, as well as the oral Torah, where Moses received all of the depth of what the written Torah is actually saying. And that was something that was revealed throughout all the generations in the times of, the sages explaining the oral Torah in the time of the Mishnah, the time of the Gemara, and the time of the Gaonim, the Rishonim, the Achronim period, and all these periods in history where it was expanded. And it still is being expanded. The oral Torah is still being expanded. Books are being written and expounded on, etc. We wouldn't have had any of that. We would have just had the first, just the first tablets. We just would have known everything from there. And it's sort of like they say this about the Gra, the Gaon of Vilna, that he was able to just open up like a Chumash, and look inside, and he saw the pasuk, the verse, and he was able to know. It was almost like a Google search. You put in you put in, and then it's like 2 million, 2 million possibilities. So he had the verse over there, and he saw all of you saw what the Talmud says about it, what the Midrash says about it. It was like this encyclopedic, and there were many greats that were like that, right? And that, they say this about the Rogachover genius, that he was so profoundly genius that, in his mind, he just knew the entire Torah. And there were many, many greats like that. But the point is that the oral Torah is the explanation, the in-depth explanation of the written Torah. So we would not have needed it. We would have been like the Gra, where we would just see the verse and understand everything behind it. We would get the inner interpretation. Amen. But because of the sin, now we got what we call the oral Torah. We have the Mishnah, the Talmud, the Midrash, and all that. So in one way, the Midrash is saying, look how great the first tablets are, and look, now the second tablets are forcing us to go into the minutia, going into the detail, and all of the detail is taking away from the pure understanding, because the pure understanding is poof, you have a clear understanding, it's wow, I get it, it's clear. But now when you don't have an understanding, clear understanding, then you have to go into the questioning, and you question, and you refute, and you hear the contradiction, and you hear the depth of what is going on, and really what is being discussed. And that's basically a lot of the Talmudic discussion is about that, going into the depth of the depth and understanding it on a clear level. But what happens in the meantime, there's a level which is called a darkness. And that's why the Talmud is called b'machashakim hishivani, that God has placed me in the darkness. That is the Babylonian Talmud. What's the darkness? Is Babylon, where the Talmud was explained, where the Mishnah was explained. The Mishnah is still kind of clear to us, but the Talmud going into that was explained in Babylonia. There was a Jerusalem Talmud, but that's also, which was written by Rabbi Yochanan 200 years earlier. But the Babylonian Talmud is where there's darkness. And what's the idea of the darkness? The idea of the darkness is the not knowing. What's the not knowing? The not knowing of being in a state of contradiction, being in a state of uncomfortability, and then needing to ask and needing to understand and needing to dig deeper. And that notion of needing to dig deeper and to find the uncomfortability within is the place of the Ba'al Teshuva. That's the second tablets. That's the oral Torah. It's the place of the Ba'al Teshuva. So on the one hand, it seems like the tzaddik is way greater than the Ba'al Teshuva. But then on the other hand, we find that in the Talmud says that what's the depth of wisdom? The depth of wisdom, Talumus Chochma, is found in the second tablets. That the first tablets had the wisdom, but what's the essence or the depth of wisdom is found in the second tablets, in the place of the falling, in the place of the Ba'al Teshuva. Specifically, there is where the depth of wisdom is actually really found. So what does this mean? How is the depth of wisdom really found within the darkness? And at this point, the darkness, when we understand what darkness means, the darkness is not something which is dark outside of ourselves necessarily. It's a place which is dark inside of us that is not yet been understood, has not yet been enlightened. Exactly. It's a place of confusion. Bavel comes from the word mevulbal in Hebrew, like when one is confused. So that's Bavel, right? And what do? You want to like clarify that. So how do you get past the confusion, right? Which is basically a state where we're all in. We're all in a state of confusion on a daily level. And actually the whole idea of learning, the learning specifically of the oral Torah is the idea of dispelling the confusion, or being able to like fix it by the confusion of Torah. And if you're able to understand it by the confusion of Torah, so then you're able to understand your own confusion and come to a state of clarity and to a greater level of clarity. And that's the depth of the learning, right? Which is, again, one of the supreme principles in Judaism is the learning, because when we do the learning, we come to a place of greater knowing. But in order to come to the place of greater knowing, we actually come to a place of the not knowing. We're in a place that we actually don't feel so comfortable in necessarily. Like it's a place that there's a question, that there's a contradiction. It's not such a easy place to be in. But within trying to grapple and to solve the problem, when we go to a place of really, we don't know the answer, like how to solve the problem. It's like when you know when you know what the puzzle looks like, you've done it before. So then like you have the puzzle, you could like do it, right? But the first time you've taken out the pieces, I've never done this puzzle before. It's like 50 pieces. It's like, you've got a couple of hours in front of you, and it's going to be pretty frustrating for the first, little bit of time, because now you're trying to like figure out and you're like, why am I even doing this? But then you get to a place of satisfaction because you've done it. You've worked through the issue and you've solved it. So, and it's like that in every situation in life, like from the very trivial, mundane things that we do, that we have, like, we don't know the answer to, and then we stick to it. But that sticking to it is a not knowingness. And that not knowingness leads us to know. Now I know what to do. But then there's something even higher in the process, because now you can know how to do this for the next time. And like you have like bots now knowing this AI, like, okay, so we know how to write this and how to do this. And we have like, so they're very predictable. And in the algorithms, I'm sure they're going to work out whatever. But basically there is a higher state of being what we call a Ba'al Teshuva, not just one that does tshuva one time. They've solved the problem. They were in a place of angst, a place of difficulty, of challenge, and they solved it. But now they're becoming the perpetual Ba'al Teshuva, which is essentially the purpose of our lives. And it says that when Mashiach comes, Mashiach will make even the tzaddikim Ba'alei Teshuva. Even the tzaddik, the one that's perfect, will take the tzaddik who seems like everything is fine, everything's good. I know the creator as because my parents knew the creator, etc. But now he or she is going to be a Ba'al Teshuva, master of Teshuva. So what is a Ba'al Teshuva? A Ba'al Teshuva is one that is perpetually curious, perpetually not there yet. Not satisfied, and constantly working on oneself to go to the next level. Celebrating the wins doesn't mean not celebrating the wins. Like it's very important to celebrate the wins and to feel like the satisfaction of like reaching a certain pedestal. But the Ba'al Teshuva is someone that is constantly going to the next level. And what's the word for that? The word for that is chokhmah. Chokhmah comes from the word koach ma, the power of what? Now, what does that mean? It's not just knowing something, but it's the power of the knowing, that there is something which is beyond the actual information, and that's where the information really comes from. Chokhmah comes from the composite of koach ma, the power of what, right? Like a behema, we say behema, like an animal, is called behema because bo ma, like you see what is within the animal. Like the animal is just about like the eating, drinking. Like today, I took a walk in nature. You know, it's amazing to see the cows, but all they're thinking about all day long, in horses, which I love, and they're just like eating their grass, and they're just like, you know, meandering all over the place, and it's amazing. But bo ma, like this is their life, right? But what's chokhmah? Chokhmah is the power of what? Because what you think that you know with your mind, there's way more that you could know. And that's the pushing of going beyond that limitation of what I know. There's the not knowing that is the root of all of the knowing, the chokhmah, right? And Adam, right, is actually called Adam from the word Adama, from earth, but he's called Adam from the word Adameh. I will resemble the creator. Adameh le'elyon. I will resemble God, basically, of going like of going beyond myself. Adameh le'elyon. I will like go transcend myself. So in this idea of like transcending ourselves, we've got this notion that everything is linear. Like everything is like, you know, we understand things in linear ways. It's like we go through our schooling process. That information is like, you know, you have to pass a test, you have to write your paper, you have to know this information, and we come to a certain place in our lives that we think that this is how the knowing, our knowing, and what we think that we understand is what there is to know. The truth is that we're forgetting something when we were very young, when we were children, which is like the immature state, but that curious state is the state where really all the neurons and everything gets developed at that point, where the young child is just experimenting and falling and touching fire and saying, I won't do it again, and curious and asking dad or mom, like, why do we, why does that happen? And why does that person's hair, like, look like that? And and all these questions that little kids ask, at a certain point, we stop asking them when we're in this linear which is basically trying to reach perfection and being in the state of mind of the first tablets, in a sense that the first tablets are like, we need to fit in like that, we need to have like that, my life needs to work out in this way, etc., etc. But when we actually fail, and this is actually a very important stage, when we actually do fall and fail, that's when we really start to discover who we are. Like when we miss the exit and we have to go to the next exit, we're like, why did that happen? Well, guess what? You just needed to go around. You needed to take the long way. I had this opportunity and I didn't, and it fell through. Now I have this second opportunity. You're like, why the intention is really there. It's just the process is for you to let go of the expectations of needing to think that it needs to go in my way. But the quicker that we learn that is the quicker that we become what we call the Ba'al Teshuva. And we actually don't, it doesn't become this hurtful thing. It's like Sheva Yipol Tzadik-perfect. Like the difference is, like when you know that there's a bump on the way, and like the first time that you're driving the car and you go over that bump, you're like, whoa, that was like a big bump. The second time you may do it again, right? The third time, whatever. But already around the fourth time, you're like, I know right around this corner, there's that bump over there. I'm just going to slow down. I'm going to go slow and easy. And like, you get that. And it's like that in our life. When we do fall, when we do have those experiences, the first time it's like crazy. What? Me? And you're sobbing. And this is like, how could that be? Etc. At a certain point, you realize that this is the intention. The intention is not knowing it, not having it all straight and figure it out. And the whole point of life is not having it, being comfortable, being uncomfortable in that state of not knowingness. Yeah.
So how you said that the tzaddik falls 7 times throughout his life, and you also comparing like what it means to be a Ba'al Teshuva. So wouldn't it, like when the tzaddik falls each time and then gets back up again, wouldn't that be the tzaddik like being a Ba'al Teshuva?
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, exactly.
So they're kind of like,
it's the Ba'al Teshuva. Yes, yeah. But the Ba'al Teshuva is higher. But the Ba'al Teshuva means the master of Teshuva. What does that master of Teshuva mean? The master of Teshuva is, what is Teshuva really? Teshuva is, what do I learn from my falling? So a lot of times we go through our falling and we're like, how could I? Or this felt like this. And like we have all the get-ups that we, I can't believe that this is happening again. And we have all this guilt and shame and all these feelings, which are very base and very primal, that very much hold us back. Brene Brown has amazing amount of research on this, and just to brought her up. But big fan of one of her, which book was it? She says, like, I just brought her up, but she said that when she sent her daughter to college, first, whatever, she said, like, it's a question of not how much you succeed, how quickly you fail. Like, you get failing, like, just fail first. Like, it's not how much you accomplish, like, as fast as possible. Like, you become like a 30-year-old, like, entrepreneur, and then you sell, your company when you're, when you're 40, and it's like how fast you get to success. It's like, it's like how quickly that you actually are more comfortable with failing. And that's actually a question.
Not scared of learning.
That's a question that a lot of, I heard that CEOs ask this, like successful CEOs ask this from people that they interview in high level positions. Don't tell me about your successes. Tell me about like your fails. The time, right? Tell me about that. I'm not so interested in like all the good stuff that you have on your resume. How about the other stuff? And again, that's the tzaddik. The tzaddik is like, what? I was like the prize student here. I did like all of this. Like, what are you talking about? Well, you want to like, what's not good about that? Well, in real life, it's about how quickly you learn from your mistakes, right? And so there's that learning curve that goes on. And when we're able to learn, that's the Ba'al Teshuva. Learn what is the lesson over here and let go of the baggage. The whole purpose of even getting me to the mistake, there's a verse that says, Noa alila livnei adam, that even the mistake is ordained for us to go through. Like the mistake itself, like even the sin, and it's like a whole subject in Chassidus that is kind of like kept a little bit quiet. There's because you could understand how people could take it the wrong way. They're like, oh, the mistake itself, it's meant to be, and therefore I'm meant to make this mistake, blah, blah, blah. You can't think that way before, right? But after you went through whatever the situation is, it's all Hashem. Hashem put you through that situation. You were there, and that is also Him. So Nora lila livnei adam, they actually say this regarding the sin of Adam and Eve, that it was all like a cosmic setup, and that they were meant to fall. And so too, that happened with the sin of the golden calf. They were meant to fall. And so too, that happens to us, where we have whatever situations we're in. You're like, there's all the shame that says, how could I, and what and the sadness and da. But it's like at the end of the day, like that's your ego talking, saying, how could I, and how, and all of that. That is really ego. It's not saying like, okay, I am not perfect, right? I am not, and it's not about being necessarily a tzaddik, right? And I'm not, right? The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that the greatest sadness, all sadness happens because we don't have a true conception of really who we are. And when we have our own expectations of being like not realistic, and like we hold by those expectations, again, perfection, and then we're like, well, I did this, then that's where the sadness comes in. But when we realize that, he says over there that, that's just the cycle of life, then so it's almost like this whoopsie that like, okay, now I get up and I get to be held up again, right? And go and continue. So it's how quickly we learn. It's not how fast we succeed. It's how quickly that we learn, and we learn from our mistakes and continue. And the quicker that we do that, the more the better our lives are basically going to be. And that's really the purpose of our lives, to continue to learn the not knowing process, that I don't know. And instead of it being a scary thing, right? I want to suggest the opposite, that it's actually it's a very childlike kind of a thing, because a child is almost like just going through life like with curiosity. They don't know everything yet. Why are many adults like not as happy as children? Because they're like, because I've been through this, I know what's going to happen today. Today's this type of a day. This is this type of a vibe, this type of a situation, this type of a this. So we're already predicting, and our brains are already predicting what it's going to be, and therefore our emotions are like aligned to the programming that we have, and our brains do it like in a split of a second, right? It's faster than a computer, right? But a child doesn't have that. A child is like, it's not programmed. It's up and it's like, wow, I'm here. It's an adventure. I'm like checking out a new place that I've never been to before. That curiosity, that adventure. So they may get into whatever it is, and right, the adventure may not be exactly what they think that it's going to go like, but that doesn't take away from the actual curiosity in the moment of like going through it, of enjoyment of the not knowing. And that's something that is actually very similar between childhood and old age. Now it says od yenuvun besevas, that the righteous ones or those that have worked on themselves, they will continue to evolve even in their old age, right? And I remember like my grandfather and my little daughter like having like a very similar expression on their face when they ate the chocolate cake, or like that. When you get to a certain place in life, if life has not been like as brutal, right? Again, the perspective of how difficult it is within our reach. But when one is the Ba'al Teshuva, has the Ba'al Teshuva perspective, then old age becomes not just old age, but it becomes a continuous curiosity of life. And it's now just not like, oh, now my life is completely, my life is actually just continuing, and I'm actually even evolving into the next stage of my evolvement, which is looking at birth and death as not just that death is not even a reality, because there's always life, right? And it always continues on, if it's in the next world and what I've done in this world, etc., who I've impacted, children and whatnot. Like life is eternal, and looking at that, again, there's the not knowing. There's a tremendous not knowing in old age, but when the process is that process of the second tablets of the Ba'al Teshuva, then it becomes like a beautiful continuous life that, again, not perfect and a lot of imperfections in the meantime, but that process of learning and growing and the not knowing is the whole purpose, becomes like the end in and of itself, not just something that you have to endure. And that's a very much an ongoing thing. Now it says in the writings of Kabbalah that within Hashem, within God, right, there are different sphirot, there's different emanations that God expresses himself in the world. The place that those emanations really start from is called Keter. Keter is crown, and that's like the super conscious level of the creator, Keter. Now within Keter, there's a realm which is Resha de lo Yada velo Yada, which the Zohar speaks about. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai has a whole section in the Zohar, Idra Rabbah. Hello?
Oh.
Mark?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt at this moment. If you want to continue, I have a question, but I can wait.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just. This is like a deep idea over here. So it says that there is there's the place of Hashem, of God, which is like the source of everything that is finite in creation. It says Resha, and there's the acronym of called Radla, Resha de lo Yada, Veloit Yada, and there's three levels within Keter, and the highest level is this level of that there's the not knowing of the creator. That there's the not knowing of the creator, which is a very profound just concept to maybe meditate on and to just think about just a little bit, because again, the difference between thinking of the creator of Hashem as being perfect versus Hashem that is dynamic. Like it's not that we know the creator based on what we think that we know. And again, that's a limitation of him, but there's a level of the creator himself that does not even know, like the not knowing, like the level of that not knowingness of the creator is even by him is the highest, is like the apex, right? The Maimonides says that he is the knower, he is what is known, and he is the knowledge itself. It's one of the most, like, I don't know, profound statements in the Rambam. Hua Yodea, he is the knower. Hua Mada, he is the knowledge. Hua Yodea.
What do you
Who-
mean?
The one that knows.
Doesn't know.
So yeah, so I'm gonna get to that. 1 second. So God is the knower. So in other words, like the knowing that goes on in the world is that there is a knower, a collective knower, that basically we are all a part of, and that when we know, it's the knower knowing himself, and what is being known, himself. So he is the knower, he is the knowledge, and he is what is known.
He's everything.
Right? That's what the Maimonides says. So like when we understand something, like even our understanding is the understanding of him understanding himself. Like we are individually, whatever we are doing, whatever process that we are individually working on, it's something which is collective, that Hashem is being known and knowing himself through our knowing, right? But that's a very profound concept of knowing, because that knowing really requires a not knowing, because then you're like, well, what am I actually knowing, and who am I?
We know.
This is like a very high state of like self, of identification of the self. Again, the duality which happened during the sin of paradise is a duality of like, there's me that I know and I'm seeing, versus the ultimate, like the ultimate knowing, the ultimate truth. But the ultimate knowing requires the not knowing of what we think that we are capable of knowing, or that we are knowing. Again, this is like a very like it's a very profound like spiritual concept.
It's like if you know, then it also means that you don't know. You know that you don't know.
Yeah.
You know what you know until what you get to know. But as much as you learn, you know nothing.
Right.
I finished the Mishnah. I know nothing. I finished I don't know what they
Right.
I know nothing. I finished all the books of the Rabbi Meir Ibn Gabbai. I don't know yet. I finished all the Helike Rabbi. I don't know. I don't know. Because there's always more to know, and especially until God.
So
you
the
don't really know.
So do you sort of feel like when you say you should be comfortable with not knowing,
Only
you
after you
mean
know.
you shouldn't be embarrassed and you shouldn't be scared and you continue to learn
To learn.
things? Or is it you should be comfortable with not knowing and like you sometimes you can leave it at that, like just
Right,
not
so-
knowing?
great question. And there's two types of people
Mhm.
in the world. There's the laziness of not knowing, because King Solomon says, Marbe chokhmah, marbe maf'ov. Like the more wisdom that you have, the more pain that you have. Like if you know something, then you're actually more susceptible to pain. So they say ignorance is bliss, because then why should I know anything? I don't want pain. So let me, right? So
Make
that's
me wake up and go to sleep better.
so that's the big difference between Judaism and, for example, Buddhism. In many ways, that they say, like, in Buddhism, they say no mind, no problem. Like everything, all of our problems come from our mind, and it's true, right? But it's not about not having a mind. It's about utilizing your mind, right? And again, knowing as much as we could know, right? But then understanding that there's something which is way beyond what I do know. And that's the not knowing part. There's a story they say about, there's a certain type of a yeshiva that were very much like they spent time in solitude in like a certain room, and they used to, like, if it's scream out, to us, that they would do a certain practice, unique practice in Musar, right? So they say the story about this particular yeshiva, where there's a new student that comes along, and he's introduced, and so they take him all around, show him around, and he's like, well, what's that, like, staircase? Where's that going? He's like, no, that's the solitude room. That's only for that's only for advanced students. And he's like, well, I'm gonna check out the yeshiva. I want to see what that looks like. So he goes into the room, and he sees, like, one person sitting there and another person sitting behind, and he's sitting there, and he's like, all of a sudden, one of them says, right, Ich bin Gurnish, like, I am nothing. And the other one says, I'm nothing. That was like their Musar type of a thing. I'm a nothing. No, they didn't say that. So he heard that, and then now he said, this new guy who's gonna come to the yeshiva, he's like, I am nothing. And so the guy in front of him that was saying I am nothing looks at him and says, who are you to say that you're nothing?
When you didn't learn anything.
Who are you to say that you're nothing? In other words, like, to be nothing, like, you have to be something. Like, in other words, it's not just like, oh, I don't know anything, so therefore I'm on the same pedestal as, right? It says peti yamin l'chol davar, that the fool will believe anyone. So it says that's talking about Moses. Moses is called a peti in Hebrew. Like, a peti is like a gullible person. Why is Moses called that? And the answer is because Moshe reached the level, again, the most humble person that ever lived. So he reached the level of the ultimate knowing, but then he did not know. He realized, he was like, whatever I know, it's like I really don't know anything. And he was the most humble person that ever lived. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, his day of celebration is on the day of Hod Shebahod, which is the acknowledgement within acknowledgement. It's the level of like complete humility, Hodis Hodayas, humility. And it's that place, that's Lag BaOmer, of like, he reached the highest levels of knowing like such spiritual truths, but yet that humility of the not knowing is where it's all about. The Baal Shem Tov says, Torah Hashem Tamima, that the Torah of Hashem is Tamima, right? So what is that like? He gives the analogy that, you have the ocean, and then you take like one cup of water, and you're like, well, I have the whole ocean in this cup. Like, of course not. So Torah Hashem Tamima, that the Torah is like pure, like as much as someone knows, it's like really, it's like as much as it's like you're taking like a cup of water and you're filling it up. You're saying, well, I have the whole ocean, I know everything that there is to know. No, and that's the difference between infinity and finite. So even finite, which is in the trillions, it's still, in terms of it's still comparable to the one. So you have, for example, someone who's a trillionaire. I don't know, maybe we'll get to that soon, but so you've got all these trillions, right? And then you've got the $1. So this person's got $1, and this person is like whatever, in front of like the biggest, the richest person in the world that has money for like lifetimes, right? And they could buy anything. So in comparison, they are compared to each other. They are comparable to each other, because one has $1, the other one has, I don't know, 50 billion. But compare that to the infinite, they are the same. They are finite. They're in the realm of finite. The infinite, right? As much as there is of the finite, if it's one or billions or trillions, compared to the infinite, it is still it is the same, right? It's compared to infinite. So this is this is basically the difference between the first tablets. The first tablets, they were like billionaires. They were like on the highest level. They had so much, but it was still finite. And the breaking of the tablets is the opportunity to go to the infinite. But to go to the infinite, that is a serious not knowing, because in order to receive the infinite, there needs to be the absolvement of the self, of the ego, in a major way, which is the whole idea of the breaking of the second tablets, where they connected now to the level of the not knowingness of Hashem, who's called the unknowable, meaning that from that level, the Reisha de lo yada velo ityada, that level of Hashem, of Hashem, is infinite, that it is not like within anything finite. It's beyond the finite consciousness that we're able to receive, right? So I know that this may sound a little bit like, up there, spiritual, or but this is what we're supposed to reach on Purim. Adelo Yada. This is the mitzvah of Purim, to reach the level of the 50th gate that it says about Haman. Haman built a tree which is 50, meaning to go to a level of infinity, right? That he tried to actually, draw down the whatever edict from there, and to find that, that there isn't this choosing or divine love that God has for us. And specifically within that place is where the whole, Purim story really turns around. That from that place, and again, the place of Teshuva, the place of Esther cries and she fasts for 3 days, and basically she goes up, she didn't, she may have not looked so good to go in front of Achashverosh,
But she was godly.
but she was she didn't, it wasn't like, oh, it's about what I know or how I'm going to be perceived on the external level. It's how I'm really connected to my essence, right? And that's what she did, right? So she was really revealing her true self, which is what we do on Purim. We reveal our true self, which is this state of that we are hiding, right? That we're constantly, like, we've got these masks going on that we're wearing, and that we're hiding. We're saying, well, I can't not know. I can't reach this stage. But when we do get to that place, there's the most profound revelation, and that is really the revelation of Yerushalayim, which Yerushalayim is called Yira Shalem, like complete awe, which is really what this not knowing is all about. Yira is awe, and that the level of Yira, as opposed to Ava, of love, that Yira is like when you have a state of awe, you're like, whoa, what's a state of awe? State of awe is you don't know it. You're like, I don't get it. Like if anyone's been to the to the falls, to the Niagara Falls, or to the Grand Canyon, or anything like amazing, so you see like a wonder, you're like, you don't get it, you don't understand it. You're like, this is this is a tremendous waterfall. Now, oh, I understand, the water flows down. It's like you look at it, you're like, whoa, you're having a moment of like, this is unbelievable. It's a moment of like not knowing and being like absolutely like overtaken by something which is way greater than yourself. That's yirah. Yirah is awe, comes from, right? That it's a feeling inside which is probably one of the most important feelings to have, which is a lot of times we don't have those feelings enough, feelings of awe, because we mostly have feelings of like predictability, of seeing what we want to see, and they're sent in our algorithms, and we want to see this, but like the experience that we had in Jerusalem, the experience that we have, that we're supposed to have, is a feeling of like being in like, whoa, like awe. Like this is something which I don't understand. I don't get. This is an unbelievable feeling. And it's a feeling I'm going to take with me when I go back to my home, and take it with me until I come back in the next holiday, right? Which is why they went up 3 times a year. We went up 3 times a year to Jerusalem to have this feeling of awe in the temple, which again is like this not knowingness, which was going on there. That's the whole service in the temple. It was like this divine, transcendent service of the not knowing, and that is the seat of all creativity. It's the seat of all spirituality, true kedusha, right? Kedusha. It's the seat of of all success, and it's like where we really reinvent ourselves and think about what's possible for us in and where we almost are non-limited. We're not limited, and it's a great feeling, but it's a scary feeling at the same time, because when you think you're not limited, that means like, whoa, where am I going? Yeah. And how am I going to, right? Because we feel very comfortable within the knowing, within the limitation. And that limitation is something which could hold us back, which does hold us back. So, questions. So things to like ponder upon. So you guys are in spot. This is a perfect place to just ponder a little bit on this. You go for a little walk, you think about this, meditate, and wherever you are, you just think about that notion of what does awe mean for me or to me? Where do I find more of these feelings of awe in my life, right? Is it like, for me, for example, a very, very important part is to go out into nature, and that's a process that the Baal Shem Tov used to have, and all the greats used to go out, because like, we see something and we're like, well, when we're in the city, like, we kind of like get things. We think that we get things. Oh, there's a building, there's a, urban life. But we go out into nature, there's something magical that happens, right? When we have a spiritual experience, such as visiting the tomb, for example, of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, or praying by the tomb of great, tzaddikim, there's an awe experience that happens over there, and a lot of people are like, no, I don't know this, I'm uncomfortable going to that place. But it's like, within that, like, going out of ourselves, like, something amazing happens. We actually like open up to again, to the not knowing. Like, all of a sudden, you don't know how, this is going to affect you and whatever, and who you're going to meet. And it's the Shabbat is another incredible, potential awesome experience, right? Where we go into the Shabbat and we celebrate it, not based on what we did last week, but we go into it and we're like, wow, this is an unbelievable, experience, which is beyond me, right? And the truth is that when we meet each other, we look at each other not on the level of, oh, I know you, or I know someone like you, therefore I put you in that stereotypical box, like, I know, right? It's like, the truth is that when we, talk to each other, meet, people that we think that we know, it's like, you don't really know them at all. It's our own, like, vulnerability, and fear of maybe they are out of the box, and our brain just wants to compartmentalize and systemize everything for us, so it makes it easier. But there's that elasticity, that there's the ability to grow and to be way beyond that. And that's what we're going to be feeling when Mashiach comes. We're going to have that feeling of the infinite coming within us, within the finite. That's what's going to happen in Yerushalayim, and in the temple. Like, we are going to, like, feel that. And again, it's like, it's a feeling of, like, it obviously there's a gradation of reaching that place, but that's going to be the feeling that the infinite and the finite are really just all a part of the same, the same source. And that's the revelation of Shiach. That's the Ba'al Teshuva. That's making the world a Ba'al Teshuva, recognizing that the world itself is not what you thought it was. So, Mark.
Yeah, thank you. So you spoke about the Zedek, and so my question is, what are the attributes of a Zedek? Is it just a righteous person?
Oh,
And also connected to that, even a higher goal, you said, is the Ba'al Teshuva, keep learning from our mistakes. So how does both of those connect? Is that Zedek aspire to be a Ba'al Teshuva, and through his lifelong learning, but he's still a Zedek in his whatever attributes you're going to explain, I hope.
Right. So that's like what you were kind of like getting at. So the tzaddik is the one that's born with the right cards, in a sense. Like, they were dealt, like, the right cards that they came from great parents. They have amazing potential. They, things are happening in their life, and so they operate from a place of predictability. There's a lot of predictability, which is great, and it's a very good place to be in, but it's not the highest place to be in. It's like when the tzaddik actually falls and then finds out that there is a deeper place that they need to get to. That's where the tzaddik becomes the Ba'al Teshuva, and the tzaddik could live his life or her life until the end of their life, and they'll you can't fault them. It's like they're living in that place, but they're not out of the box. They're not they're within the confine of everything that they were trained to do. So they're not doing anything wrong by not going out of the box, because they were trained to stay in the box, and to be in the box is like what the tzaddik basically does, drawing down godliness into, within that place. And so that's a very positive thing. But the Ba'al Teshuva is the one that is not dealt those cards, does not have that same mission. And it doesn't mean that the Ba'al Teshuva is lower than the tzaddik, but the Ba'al Teshuva has to now come to a place of really being comfortable in the non-predictability of life, and so going into the Hashem on the highest level is actually, even Hashem is not known. Reisha de lo yada velo yada, even like the unpredictability, even right on the highest level, it is the non-predictable. It's not that predictable, life of the tzaddik, which is what it's about. So Mashiach is going to reveal to the tzaddikim that even they have to get out of this predictable mindset, which is actually, like, again, Purim, we're supposed to go to this place of Ade lo yada, that even the tzaddik is supposed to reach this level of not knowing. Like, you think that this has been good and good and good. How do you know that that's not bad? And how do you know that the bad things aren't really good? You're assuming that all the good things are what I define as good, and the bad as the bad. But how do you know? Maybe it's just the opposite. Maybe what you consider Ar Haman is really your greatest blessing. And maybe what you consider your, having dealt like this perfect kind of life, maybe, again, it is what it is, but it's like, how do you know that that's like the greatest? You may not have the same level of independence, the same level of like courage, the same level of whatever someone that didn't, right? Of course, like our lives are what they are, and what we're dealt with is that's it. But we could always jump higher, and that's the idea of the Ba'al Teshuva, the master of Teshuva, which is even the tzaddik could have this notion of the not knowing, that I could still not know, that what is predictable for me is not, the end all. It's where's their curiosity, where's their awe, where's their like that space of like reaching beyond myself. So that's I think that's where we'll leave off for today. Baruch Hashem. Thank you, Sally. I wanna bless us all that we should really just bring this this incredible auspicious holiday of Purim that is the level of lot. Purim literally means lots. That but the idea of lot is above knowledge. Like you win the lottery, you didn't plan it. You know what I'm saying? So everywhere that we may be in our life, there's a lottery that we're meant to be in that space, in that time, in that moment. And instead of saying like I should be in a different place, or I need to be in a here and there, like what is there for you to learn? What is there for us to learn in the space that we're in the moment that we are there? Because that's our lottery. So that takes the not knowing, because if you're gonna know why you're here, you're already projecting on what's next, or things that were similar in the past, instead of waiting for the beautiful opportunity to manifest itself in the moment. And that's the most exciting thing, and the most happy thing, the most beautiful thing that and it's like that childlike curiosity, beauty, newness, which is available to us, available to the Ba'al Teshuva, the not knowingness of the Ba'al Teshuva. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Wishing you a beautiful Shabbat and a beautiful rest of the month of Adar.